Liverpool, Everton. But then you look at it and you think, Everton, where have you been in this fixture? Where have you been? Liverpool have only lost one of their last 25 Premier League games against their great Merseyside rivals, Everton. And that was a 2-0 home defeat behind closed doors in February 2021. I don't know, Martin, where I phrase this, and it's a sensitive subject, and Evertonians will be all too aware of it. How do they shift their inferiority complex here?
Well, if I take you back to, this is, since the time began, Premier League, this is the 63rd Premiership Derby game between these two teams, and it is, Jim, something special, particularly when you wear that blue of Everton and you wander into Anfield. There's the electricity of the game, the atmosphere is quite remarkable. And I remember, it takes me back to that first game, and incidentally, the game that Everton won. And back in the day, it was Barnes and co, and what a wonderful team they had. The years of the 80s and the 90s, the Dalglishers and everyone, it was in everyone's mind. And but for me, I learned a great lesson, because not coming from the area, and what a tremendous hotbed it was, I found the game a great leveller. I'd played against these teams, for Brighton, for Villa, and been thumped. And here we were suddenly playing in a Merseyside derby, and they were playing not with their heads, with their hearts. And I thought, hold on, we've got a chance in this game. And I felt that those games were very different. Now, that may be the fighter's chance that the Everton players have in this one. Recently, of course, again, away from home, I think they've only won 2 games away from home since Sean Dyche has been there. But they've played really good counter-attacking football against Brentford, quite recently. They've won 2 or 3 games. They're now changing the personnel. There have been a few changes. Brentwaite's come in and played at the back, Jim, so there's a little partnership emerging there. They're using Ashley Young at right back instead of left back. McElhenney now is coming into the team. So the midfield, Gardner is progressing, playing more centrally. Harrison did really well in the game before. So Iwobi's been allowed to leave. So Sean Dyche has been managing really well from the start of the season. It was a disastrous start to the season. Yeah. And they're re-emerging. Whether they can do anything at Anfield, Jurgen Klopp could be complaining that it's another 12:30 game. Incidentally, though, I think he has a point, though, in all of this. I think it's something like 12 games now that they've played at 12:30, and there's only the nearest club to them, I think 5. I think is Spurs that have played after an international weekend.
So what's his point?
Well, the point is that he doesn't want. Why are they always picked upon to be the early kick-off game? And in fact, we'll see it again in a month's time when they play Man City. Will be at the 13th early kick-off after international weeks away. I do feel when all the players from all corners of the earth are coming back together to form Team Liverpool or Team Arsenal, whatever, it is a little bit tricky. So I have some sympathy there that the 12:30 game should, if it doesn't apply after European weeks, it shouldn't be there for the international weeks.
But I don't get it, Martin.
Well, you don't get it because you're not a player. You've not been a player.
It's
Jim.
2.5 hours earlier. What's the problem with it?
We don't know how long it's taken Diaz to come back from Colombia, do we? When did he arrive back?
I think what Jim point's making is does 2.5 hours really make that much difference?
Yes, I think it does, actually. That morning, that extra the food
hours
that you have, you're not having spaghetti bolognese at 8 o'clock in the morning. You're having it slightly later. I think that I do sympathise with Liverpool. That why is it always Liverpool? So have 13. We're 12th weekend that we've seen it. So look. What Klopp can't do is allow it to affect the players, which they did against Wolves last time out, the last set of internationals. They came back, they were awful in that first half against Wolves, and they fought back, they won the game 3-1. So it's in the mindset a little bit. And it's perfect. It's a bouncing Anfield. It's at home. I think it's important after the
I want to ask you this, Martin,
to play at home.
And I do hope Evertonians don't get miffed by this. But when you pull on that Everton shirt and you play Liverpool, how aware are you that you're playing...
Let's not forget the great successes
for the smaller
the mid-80s.
Let's not forget in the 80s,
Merseyside
in the 80s,
club.
It was neck and neck for a time. Of course, what Liverpool were doing in the Champions League was to another level.
40 odd years ago, Martin.
Yes, but you have to. There's always an underdog, But you should never live in their shadow. You've got to want desperately to beat Liverpool. And as I've said to you, there is a great leveller. Fantastic talents were miscontrolling the ball.
But
when John Barnes played, I'm not saying that he didn't do great things against Everton, because he did. Put the YouTube of a 4-4 match on in and around that time. Credible football.
But if you do a poll of Rangers and Celtic players, fans this morning, they would say, Rangers fans would say, we're every bit as good as them. Maybe they're not, but that's what they'd say. Celtic fans would say, you're kidding, we're miles ahead of them. But if you spoke to Liverpool and Evertonians,
you have that fighter's chance.
Everton fans, I think, would admit, hands up, we've been way off it when it comes to playing this lot.
Yeah, but so when they go into that game, is that what they're to believe? That they've got to believe they're creating something new at Everton. In all that adversity, they don't know if the ownership's taking place. In that backdrop, they're going into Anfield. They're 16th in the table. They're climbing up the table slightly. They're 2 or 3 wins recently, Jim. They've got to look on the positives.
Yes.
Look, we know it's difficult. And Liverpool have not been brilliant at home at times, have they? Conceding the occasional early goal. They've got to hope they can do that. You've got to go in with that fighter's chance.
What you're doing is you're taking this as a micro conversation. Jim's making it a macro conversation, which is basically over the 20-odd times that they've played, 25 times, that the difference between Everton and Liverpool is vast.
We've got
in this individual game, you're suggesting that because it's a derby, if you did it without the derby factor against a side that was 3rd in the Premier League or 4th or wherever Liverpool are, and a side that's struggling at the 16th, you'd always price in the fact that the 16th side are going to get themselves a handful of problems. In this instance, there's an added ingredient, which is the derby. But even in this instance, statistically, it doesn't prove anything because Everton don't win.
So let's all pack up and go home.
No, I'm not saying that. We're talking about in the global perspective. But I'm not saying no, of course not, because every game you go into, you've got to try and...
How did they change it though, Martin? How did they change it?
Better players.
Well, I think what you have to look to, and I know...
Liverpool have only lost one.
We're clutching at straws,
25.
I suppose, if you want to see an Everton victory there, because if you think the performance against Brighton when they were quite magnificent away from home last year, the one against Brentford, but these are only 2 results in all that time that Sean Dyche has been at the club. So it's very unlikely, but nonetheless, you have to look at that, don't you? You have to look at the positives and think, well, okay, we can do this again.
If you see,
we can upset the apple
If you
cart.
see 2:30 on Saturday afternoon, Liverpool 3, Everton 0, you'll be like, I expect that. If you saw Everton 3, Liverpool 0, you'd fall off your chair, wouldn't you?
Spot on.
As we did when they beat Brighton.
Yeah.
Was it 5?
Yeah.
Well, I'll ask you, Martin. Liverpool, Everton, who wins it?
I think Liverpool win the game.
Okay, good conversation.
Yeah. That's where we're at. It's live in talkSPORT tomorrow, 12:30. They're back, whether everybody likes the 12:30 kickoff or not.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.